Hello there, and welcome again to the Impact Zone podcast. I am back again to talk more Impact Wrestling shenanigans, and this time I'm decided to discuss Jake something, the wrestler. A few of us Impact faithful, and even a few other people out there know Jake something. I know some people know him by other names and whatnot. Jake, he's been wrestling for a few years now. I don't know exactly how long. He's been here and there on the Impact TNA roster. He's doing some interesting stuff here and there on the indies, as I sort of said. But of course, being on TNA, despite how many people say TNA isn't a very big platform or whatever, it's certainly the biggest platform that he's on. So that's where most people are going to know him from. Now, I do think that making comparisons between certain wrestlers and certain other wrestlers is somewhat unfair, because like in some ways you will always talk about like wrestlers journey, and everyone's different, like not everyone has to be the same, and I don't want to ever say anything mean about this guy. He's doing way more, and he's having way more success than I ever had being a wrestler. So, and he is doing a job. But I've seen so many people say, "Hey, this guy should be the champion." And hey, maybe one day he should be the champion, but I don't think right now is the right time for him. And I want to sort of discuss, or have this little piece out there to say, hey, this is why I don't think that he should be the champion. Not that I think that he doesn't deserve it at some point, one of these days. I don't know. But I'm not saying that he will never deserve it. I'm just saying that he doesn't deserve it right now. And there's a lot of real reason, behind that. It takes a heck of a lot, to be the champion of any promotion, let alone one. And again, I know some people will say, "Oh, TNA's got an audience of 3 and a dog," or whatever. But again, no, not really. Like, but still, I know that that's the perception some people kind of have and whatnot, and that sort of thing. But that's just not true. So it's one of those weird things about like wrestling. You can get different perspectives from anyone and everyone who watches wrestling, and I've watched wrestling for many years. But, and again, maybe my opinion doesn't matter to some people, and I'm not, again, trying to go out of my way to bury someone or whatever, someone might say. No, I'm just saying, hey, to those people who are out there clamoring for this, well, eventually, maybe, who knows, we'll have to wait and see for this kid. And that's the thing, like, I don't want to call him a kid, but he's still a fairly young wrestler. He's still developing along the path to being one of the guys that's even in the company. He hasn't won a title in the company, and perhaps that's down to booking or whatever. You could say that there's some missed opportunity there, or whatever, but still, realistically, you've got to think that, well, that's not just down to booking, because it's, down to, again, what you as a wrestler or whatever are able to bring to the table. And that doesn't just mean inside the ring, that means outside the ring. You've got to be able to, you don't have to, not everyone has to be, out there in suits or whatever else. That's not what I mean. I do think that that is good sometimes, but not everyone has to do that all the time, because again, when you've got a character or something that, it doesn't really work for, or, you don't, again, like if you want to just, dung around in your, you know, boots or your workout gym clothes. And again, that's sometimes what you've got to do, because again, hey, I'm very busy and I've got, a whole bunch going on, that, means, hey, I don't have a lot of time to, get changed and, do this sort of stuff to, really get to, looking good for interviews sometimes, unless, like it's, well in advance, planned or whatever, that sort of thing, like it's one of those things. I get that. And that's, I think maybe the main reason I guess I'm seeing some of this like chatter is that, Jake something is in the qualifiers for the Road to Slammiversary. So there's that chatter, of him being like saying, oh, he should qualify and be in the title match and he should be the champion. Well, yeah, that's probably, why. And again, I don't want to be toxic or whatever or anything like that. And I'm not trying to demote him. He's like, or anything. I'm just trying to say to, again, or trying to at least. So it's a difficult road, and that's the thing. It takes a long, long time. And even look at Joe Hendry, who's an amazing wrestler in some ways, like, but the thing is, he has had a quite a long career of actually like going through the steps to, get to where he's actually at nowadays, like, so you have seen that, like you can look back to his career, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, it is, where he was wrestling, and was, not as big, and it takes a long time sometimes for someone to finally blow up. And I just don't even think that Jake's even, like, I don't want to be mean again, I don't even think that he's on that path that Joe was, even all those years ago. I think he's a very young and developing wrestler. I do think that he has potential in the future. Perhaps, I don't know. You never say never. Absolutely not. And I don't want to degrade him or anything that he does or whatever. He's doing some great work there and whatnot, but it isn't what I would class as being worthy of even a main event guy or a, guy that you could strap your world title to, because having to be the world champion is a extremely difficult task. You need to be one of the few people that is an actual draw, that is an actual needle mover, something that people will, tune in for, will buy tickets for to see, and will buy pay-per-views and merchandise and all of that stuff for. If you're having an interview like with some of these wrestling channels and personalities, you've got to be the one that people are going, man, I've got to see this interview because this guy has got something, or has got, or is about to blow up. We've seen that a lot with Joe Hendry, and again, I don't want to compare anyone to anyone too much, but, if you're looking for somebody who's, on the cusp of becoming perhaps the next, or one of the next potential TNA world champions, you can't look much further past Joe Hendry. And yes, they've been building Joe Hendry up to that main event level of recently, and I think some people have sort of like kind of almost forgot about that, but they actually have realized, hey, well, this guy's catching fire, and let's take advantage of it as much as what we can, and put him in some main events and start doing some stuff with him to, see how we can, build this guy. And that's what it takes. It takes doing all of this media. You need to do a lot of media. You need to do a lot of promotion for the company and for the events and yourself and whatnot. So you need to have a big presence, not just on social media, but on, you need to be very easy. Well, and I'm not saying that, Jake isn't easy to approach or whatever, but I'm just saying you need to be somebody, again, like you need to have some level of hype behind you, and it's hard to make that sometimes. And it's certainly, again, this is an organic process, and it sometimes, again, takes time for that to translate fully to the full audience and for people to be like really, really invested in you. I mean the whole audience. If you look at a show that TNA does, or any show or whatever that involves, anything to do with some of these other wrestlers, do you ever see like, hundreds and hundreds of people bringing, Jake something, faces around or whatever? You don't see that. You don't see, other companies talking about somebody like him, because he's not even on their radar. Because again, and it's nothing that he's bad or whatever. Again, it's just that these other wrestlers are much more in the consciousness and are so much further ahead of him that it's just like, well, they barely know that this person even exists. So again, that's how you've kind of got to look at it. You've kind of got to look at it like, well, it's not just a popularity contest. No, it isn't. But that is a part of it, because again, you've got to be able to get those people invested. And when people like you and people, want to see you succeed, and especially again, a lot of people from NXT and maybe even WWE as a greater whole have now seen Joe Hendry. Perhaps they'll see even more of him soon, who knows? But there is, discussion about, more stuff happening on the road to Slammiversary, or even at Slammiversary itself, with, the NXT, WWE, and TNA crossover. So, or whatnot. So there is that. And if you're looking at anyone, I don't know that Dijak and some other wrestlers, I can't remember who else, there's a couple of other wrestlers that recently quit or whatever, or were recently released or whatever. But if you were looking at like dream matches for some of these like wrestlers to face in TNA, like when would you get to Jake something? Like if you were to be thinking, oh man, I really want to see him, this person and that person, LA Knight and Joe Hendry or something, because that'd be great promos and whatnot. Maybe it wouldn't be as great of a match or whatever, but it still would be great promos, and then the match would be decently good, and that would be interesting, to see something like that, or something else, like you wouldn't, like Jake something wouldn't really come up for a very long time. There'd be so many other wrestlers that are ahead of him in terms of like, oh man, I know this person would have bangers with this person or that person or whatever, and that sort of thing. You'd say like the number one person, obviously, that we all like, and even I did a fantasy booking like video here on the channel about it. I said AJ Styles is like the number one person. It's pretty much the only person that I really, really, really care about coming over from this NXT, whole thing. That's the one person. Like, there's like, yeah, maybe Bobby Roode or something else or whatever. Maybe Abyss coming back or something like that. That wouldn't be bad. But again, just that's the number one. Like, you would think of that. Like, everyone else is like secondary or tertiary or whatever. So again, like, if you were to look at my fantasy booking list, Jake something isn't on that list. Because it's very tough to sort of book somebody for like whatever number of months it is, and maybe it's longer than what I thought, but I thought that that was a neat wrapped up story in of itself, so I thought that it would work and it would make sense in some regards, and you could do big things and big matches in that time period, in that 2 or 3 months or whatever it was, maybe even 4 months or whatever it was. So again, like, it's if you can't make, and it's not like he's a bad wrestler. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying that if you can't make somebody, or and it doesn't have to just be mine, because even people that have gone through some of the matches that AJ could have, or anyone else that you want to bring from NXT or WWE, you would probably not think of Jake something even in the first 10 to 20 matches that they could have, and they'd all be unique matches. Even somebody as young and fresh as, what's his name? Leon, what's his name? God. Leon Slater. Yeah. Even as someone like Leon Slater, you could like picture a match between him and AJ, or him and somebody else, or whatever. Those would be great, great matches, because he's already been compared to AJ in some regards, and whatnot. So there is sort of some stuff there, and he has done some great stuff. I just saw his match on Explosion against Khan, and like, I was really surprised by that. Like, Explosion typically like isn't a, but yeah, like that's what I mean. Like, it's one of those. I actually lost my train of thought there. So yeah. But anyway, yeah, like, it's always the question, and this is one of the things that, again, I've said this many times, that being a babyface is incredibly hard, because you've got to get the people to actually give a shit about you, and that's really tough. Like, he does certainly get, at least Jake certainly does get his chance, and he certainly gets his time that he gets over, certainly, definitely, and there is certainly a level there that he is at it with the audience, and the connection that he has with the audience. And again, not everyone has to be presented in the same way. You can look at somebody like Samoa Joe or somebody like that, whatever. But again, like, you really need somebody that, besides in the ring, just in the ring, like, as a wrestler, like, yeah, you can have a great power wrestler. That's fine. Like, it doesn't matter what you can really do in the ring, realistically. That's, not really here nor there that much in terms of, like, being a world champion that much, because, like, for the most part, the world champions don't have to really put on, at least in my opinion, I don't think they have to put on absolute, 5-star classics. I think it's fine for them to have decently good matches, as, whatnot. But I do think that the rest of the card does need to pick up some of that slack sometimes, of having the best match, perhaps, or whatnot. And, like, just having the best match doesn't equal being the, top guy or the face of the franchise or whatnot. That is what we're talking about. Could he find success in another division? I could see him being a tag team champion at some point. I don't really see that who he could really be a great tag team wrestler with right now. I don't even think like his team with his like cousin Diener is all that great. I actually kind of think that Diener as a character is actually really good and really great, and that's kind of like one of those things. I think that they're kind of sitting him with that veteran who knows a lot about wrestling and can kind of help teach Jake a whole lot of stuff that he needs to kind of work on as far as being, connecting with the fans and whatnot, all that work that he needs to do. I actually felt like maybe they should have just turned him heel, because that, again, like I say, being a babyface is incredibly, incredibly difficult, and it's so much easier to try to get heat and try to make the audience hate you than it is for you to try to make the audience, care about you and love you. So I almost felt like maybe they should have just gone down that road and see where it led, and then have Jake doing like other things and kind of expand kind of some of the things that he's done and whatnot, like the way he does them and things like that, or whatnot. So like, yeah, it's really, really tough to sort of like, and you can sort of point to other wrestlers that they've kind of quote unquote dropped the ball with again in some regards and whatnot. Um, but still, like, they're not really dropping the ball with him if he's not really giving them anything to really go off. And it's fine if you want somebody who's a mid-carder and they know they're a mid-carder, or they can fill any role in that sort of tag team X Division, sort of area. Even when he was like having his X Division match or whatnot, I don't think there was a whole lot of like support really for him. Like, I think there was some, certainly, but I don't think that there was a heck of a lot. Perhaps maybe it was because it was too early in Mustafa Ali's run and people just didn't believe that the title would change that quickly. I don't know. But again, like, I don't feel like, even so, didn't really see that with almost anyone else, even people that challenged before that. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was fine for what it was, and it achieved what I think it should have achieved as far as a story and whatnot in that regard. But again, like, as I sort of said, you could say, oh well, they've dropped the ball with him. They haven't given him anything really else to do. Well, again, that's because he hasn't really been able to showcase and connect and, really get over to the extent that they felt like he should have done. So they haven't really given him the ball because he hasn't really gotten over as much as what they would have hoped he had. And again, look at Josh Alexander, and we'll continue to compare him to everyone else. But again, you talk about somebody who's a sort of quote-unquote straight-laced wrestler, but Josh has, and it's really hard to put your finger on what Josh has. And again, everyone has this. Look at Hammerstone. Again, another wrestler, very similar to Jake in some ways, a powerful wrestler. And even though he's not there right now because he's been out injured and he's sort of rehabbing right now and whatnot, you can say that he was very over. Yes, he's a heel, but again, he has a connection with that audience, and he got that connection pretty much immediately, even when he was a babyface, because he knows how to carry himself. He knows he's a star, and he's had a lot of experience. Yes, that's true. But again, Jake hasn't been here for, 2 eggs and a ham sandwich. He's been around for a while, not as long as I think what Hammerstone and some other wrestlers are. And I'm not knocking anything that he's done or that he's doing. Again, he's doing some great stuff, but it's not up to the standards, in my opinion, of even in the ring and on the mic, of what you would need from a world champion. And again, like TNA, they're in a difficult position because their TV network isn't really that great. Like we know that, and we've known that for many years. They could get a better network maybe, or an improved network maybe, but honestly, again, that's not really where they need to find their focus. They need to focus in on streaming and social media, because that's where you get the most sort of connection with the fans and interaction and whatnot, likes and retweets and all of that stuff. And that's how, when something goes viral, again, you can tell that this person is getting over because the fans are following it. Joe Hendry is the most over person that's on that roster right now. So they need to ride that wave of support for Joe Hendry as long as they can run it, because that's what they should do, and B, what they need to do, because that's where it's going. And I don't even see it in the next couple of years, but maybe in the next couple of years, I don't know. It could be Jake's time, who knows? But it's not going to be, even in the next couple of years, in my opinion. It's going to take quite a while for him, and he could be all right upper mid-carder, and that will be fine. But I think that he'll ultimately start to feel like a jobber to the stars to some people, unfortunately. Maybe that will help him, because some people will actually start feeling like, man, this guy gets his chances, but he always gets overlooked. And I guess that's where I'm looking at it, is this upcoming week's episode of TNA Impact and whatnot, the upcoming qualifier matches and whatnot are going down this week and whatnot. So we're waiting to see, where all that's heading, where all that's going, who's going to win. I know that the actual, results or whatnot are out there. And I know that Jake something is actually going against Joe Hendry, which is kind of a bit of an odd one there, I guess, but whatever. But again, and we might talk about the other match just quickly again, and this will sort of reveal again a lot here. Frankie Kazarian versus Mike Santana. Now, both of probably Santana, in my opinion, is, again, one of those guys that's on the cusp, really on the cusp of being close to being a world champion level wrestler, and could be in this main event. But I don't think that he's going to be in this main event, just because, Frankie Kazarian and Joe Hendry have a storyline going. Maybe he could be, maybe I could be wrong, and maybe Kazarian will cost Joe Hendry the match or whatever at Slammiversary. We'll have to wait and see. But again, you talk about these guys, they're in a feud. You want that feud to continue. You want it to continue probably until after Emergence, at least, perhaps, to give Joe Hendry something to do until Victory Road, so that you can set him up potentially, perhaps, at Victory Road, so that he can then go on to Bound for Glory and be the number one contender. I don't know whether it's Joe Hendry's time to beat Moose at Bound for Glory. I don't know. That's, again, very, 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 very tough to call. I feel like Moose's world title reign probably should be at least 1 year long, if not longer. So, again, that's really tough to sort of say. So, again, you're looking at this extremely hot Joe Hendry, and are you going to spend the next, year or more trying to build back to it? No, they did that with Cody Rhodes, and that, it did work, but I don't think it's worth doing the same sort of thing. TNA doesn't want to be WWE. They don't want to do something that WWE is doing or has done. They want to do something, that, they would be doing anyway. But it's obviously logical that Joe Hendry should be going towards this goal. Perhaps they could extend the, Kazarian feud out to Bound for Glory. I don't know. That doesn't seem 1,000% likely to me. Perhaps, again, they could bring in somebody else for Joe Hendry to feud with. But you need to keep Joe Hendry in these main event, high caliber, high stakes affairs. So that, again, he feels very important, and it feels like he is at the top of the card, and he will get that opportunity down the road. It's not just we've forgotten about him and he's gone by the wayside or whatever. That's the thing. You've got to keep him hot because he's the hottest thing that you've got right now. So you've got to keep, if you're going to say, okay, we're going to wait until after Moose, like, I don't know that that's actually the plan, but that's just how I feel. I feel like Moose's title run should be at least a year, if not longer. It should be the longest title run in TNA wrestling history and whatnot. I think at that 1 year mark, or basically at that 1 year mark, they should revisit the match between Josh Alexander and Moose. That's the match that they should have, and Moose should avenge the loss that he had to Josh Alexander. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was. So yeah, I think that's the match they should have there, perhaps, or whatever. Maybe that should be the culmination of their rivalry, perhaps. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's very tough to sort of like exactly book that, and I'm not the booker or whatever of these sorts of things. I'm just sort of spouting things and coming up with ideas based on what I know and what I would think you should do. But then again, it's really tough because, again, you've got to give you've got to give Josh something to do, and hopefully I'm fingers crossed that the thing that I want the most to come out of Slammiversary or the WWE NXT relationship will happen. But will it? I don't know. And perhaps, like, it could. Even if, like, AJ's not wrestling, he could just turn up to go into the Hall of Fame, and that will still be, like, really, really special and, really important in many ways. But again, to me, like, if you talk about AJ Styles' career and whatnot, and a lot of other people, and I don't want to get too far down into AJ Styles, I will cap this off just after saying, why he at least needs to have one match or at least one full program in TNA before, like, properly retiring, is that's everything. That's, like, if you're saying this is the end of your career, how else are you going to go out rather than a good swan song? Not just, well, I lost to Cody Rhodes and then I got inducted in the Hall of Fame and that was about it. Like, I just wandered off into the sunset. Like, if you, like, have a proper story saying, no, this is my swan song in all of wrestling, like, this is it, this is it. I'm gone. No more. The emotional connection that the audience, the TNA audience, has to, AJ is unparalleled and unprecedented. And this is, again, going back to Jake something. The level of fan interest and connection with him, it is there. You see people chanting his catchphrase, something, when he says, "What's my name?" and that sort of thing. You see them rallying for him when he's, gotten beaten down to make a comeback and things like that. So you do see that stuff, but again, is that going to translate to being the guy? No, not yet, at least. It's a long, I've said this so many times on here as well, it's a long, long road, and it takes a long, long time and whatnot, and not everyone, even those people that have some potential, make it. Look at Monty Brown. He had a lot of potential. He had a lot of charisma. And he was a big man, or a bigger man. He wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world, but he didn't need to be. That's not always the point. He was entertaining, and he could put on a decently good match. And that's all that you need. All that you need is a decently good, wrestler that can do what is necessary in a match to get the fans invested in them and in the matches and in their stories. So you got to be able to tell those stories too. And that's also the problem that I think Jake has. He can't tell a story on his own, realistically. He really needs a great dance partner to help him look good. And he looks good, like, as far as being big and jacked and whatnot, and being, doing what he does. And he does some great stuff. Like, again, like I keep saying, I don't want anyone to take what I'm trying to say out of context. I'm trying to give him as many props as what I can give him, because he absolutely does deserve those as well. But I'm just saying, and I've been saying, hey, you need to temper your expectations of where he's at and whether he's going to win. And if he doesn't win, you can't give up on him. Like, that's the thing as well. Some people's perspective of, oh, well, they've forgotten about him or whatever, this or that, or he's never going to get there because, the company doesn't believe in him. Well, they only believe in him to the point that the fans also believe in him. It's not like WWE where, somebody who's running it, and they do have good, bookers and wrestlers there that know really what they're talking about and probably will know exactly what I'm on about here if they ever, happen to listen to this. But I'm just saying, like, if they're going to book him and they're going to do stuff with him, that's what they've got to do. They've got to think, okay, well, how can we put him in the best positions to hopefully, get over, and the rest is up to him. The rest is up to him and getting out there and actually putting in the work, getting out there in front of those crowds, having those moments, having those matches, having that time, having to say, hey, like Joe Hendry said, hey, I want to do this Chris Van Vliet thing. Can we organize that? Yes, of course we can. You can take a week off to do that or whatever it was. I wanted to go do and put my music video out and oh, what's that? Oh, well, it's just topped the charts. So do you mind if I take a week or two off just to do some media? And I'm going to sprinkle in some stuff about TNA and promotion and whatnot as well. So they said, yes, things like that. You've got to take the initiative. You've got to take the bull by the horns, whatever you want to say, the old cliches. You've got to get out there and put in the work, not just, oh, well, I'm here and, if people want to, book me. No, I've got to be looking for those bookings. I've got to be looking for those interviews. I've got to be willing to do some of these things and, find other ways to get myself, you don't have to be a comedy wrestler. You don't have, or you can be a comedy wrestler or whatever else it is. It doesn't matter what you're doing as long as it's working. It doesn't matter if it's comedy or serious or whatever else it is, as long as it's translating to the audience and as long as people are invested and believe in you in some way, shape or form, then you're doing what you need to be doing. You should be perfectly fine with being a mid-card wrestler, or even labeled as a mid-card wrestler. And I think that label gets thrown around too much as well by a lot of people who talk about wrestlers. Oh, this match is filled with mid-carders. Yes, because it's a mid-card match, you see. Like, what are you talking about? You're expecting main eventers in the mid-card? You'd be like, what the hell is John Cena doing in the mid-card? Like, what are they doing to John Cena? They're trying to lower his, expectations or whatever. And if you put a mid-carder, a perennial mid-carder in the upper mid-card or even in the semi-main event or main event, you'd be going, oh, well, this guy's got no chance of winning, does he? Because he's a mid-carder, and things like that. Like, yes, again, like build and direction and all that stuff is a little bit different than that. But again, like if you've just seen somebody be a mid-carder for, whatever number of years and whatnot, and then suddenly here they are in the semi-main or main event, or even the other way around. If you see this main eventer and suddenly they're in the mid card, it's one of those things, or even like you could say the opening matches or whatever. But I think, like, again, people don't really understand how a card works. Especially a lot of these people that, deem people to be mid carders. And it's funny that mid carders are even the people that, open the show sometimes. And whatnot, which is really weird because that's, the opening slot. But the opening slot, in my opinion, should be, going to guys again that are actually, on the cusp of being upper card guys, because you're being trusted with one of the most important things possible, like the opening match of a show, even like the pre-show matches or dark matches that they used to have back in the day. You'd have a couple of those, pre-show style, whatever, dark matches. Now that you get to see them on the kickoff or the buy-in or whatever you want to call it, the countdown show, on TV, you actually get to see some of these matches as well. But those are the warm-up matches for the audience, for the crowd, really. And like you see in those, matches and whatnot, like the crowd is still filing into the arena for the most part. So, not everyone's in their seat and ready to go for the show. And I don't know whether that's because they think the first couple of matches are piss break matches or whatever. I don't know, but whatever. That is how it is sometimes. Like, oh yeah, there'll be a couple of like opening matches and they won't be much, and there'll be piss break matches or whatever else it is. But like, that is what it is. It is what it is, and it helps let people get into their seats and get ready for the show, and you'll see those matches and get ready for the opening match, which, should kick off a really good show. And you have to have two teams of trusted people involved in that match or whatever, a trio, so whatever else it is, in that match, so that you can get, not, and again, this works more for pay-per-views, I would say, but again, even same thing for TV, when the first show of, a TV taping starts, you want your fans to be amped up and hyped and ready to go and, cheering and chanting and, having a good time, because the match that they just saw was freaking awesome. And then you have to go from there in a card. Now you have had your opener, which, is your starting match, or your whatever, realistically, at least on TV, like your dark match now might go to being on Explosion, or might be going on to being, the countdown or the kickoff or the countdown or whatever else you want to call it. I don't care what you want to call it. The buy-in, whatever. All that stuff. But yeah, like, you need those matches too. Those people, again, serve a very important role in the show, or in the warming up of the show for the crowds and for the people that are still, filing in. Oh, the action's starting. Quick, quick, quick. Like, even if it's not the best match in the world and these are, warm-up matches or whatever, quick, the show might start, in 30 minutes or whatever else it is. Let's get our seats, and then we can watch this, as well. Like, here we are, we've got our beer, we've got our wings, whatever else. We've got our friends, we've got our cameras, we take our selfies or whatever. All that sort of stuff, you're getting ready for the show. And yes, those first couple of matches, they're nothing super duper to write home about, but they're there and they're decently okay. And then you get a really good one, and then you get some, decently good ones, after that. Or you get something different. You get a promo or a comedy match or something else, or some other variety match or moment or whatever to, shake the card up and not really be doing the same thing. Because again, the show's just started. You've already started with a bang, and now, okay, well, let's slow things down a little bit, or let's do something else. You can keep going hot, or you can keep trying to go hot, as well. Like, you could take it either way, or whatever. You can do whatever you want, but at some point, you've got to have a match that's, going to separate from that, hot match, hot match, hot match, hot match. You can't just have all hot matches. And this is something that I said here on Facebook the other day when somebody was, asking about, why aren't there longer matches on TV and things like that? And I said, well, it's just not physically, realistically possible on a 2-hour show, which is what most wrestling shows are. And I think that that's pretty much the optimum amount of hours for a wrestling show. You get a little bit of everything. And that's, again, like the point of like these wrestling shows, to give you a little bit of everything. Again, so you want your tag teams, you want your ladies, you want your, quote unquote cruiserweights or light heavyweights, you want your smaller guys, you want your tag teams, you want, your, world title main eventers. The way you like break up a card into saying, oh, these are just like guys that are going nowhere in the mid card. Well, that's not true. They are in that mid card again because they're on their ascension to being, a top level guy. So if you're like, again, saying, putting that stigma on somebody just because somebody is in that position or has been in that position for a long time, that's not really fair, because again, like, then you're even hindering their progress. And then if you turn around and say, why haven't they done anything with X, Y, or Z? Well, you just said that they were a mid-carder and they're not worthy of being, an upper-card guy, when you said that this is full of mid-carders that have no potential or whatever, So they're taking that into consideration and saying, oh, well, the fans aren't invested in any of these guys, so we're not going to invest any more time in these guys. And that's the thing. You've got to see that investment pay off in a sense. You've got to have, fans buying in, and again, in any way possible, to what you're doing, buying your merch, this or that. And it takes a lot for that to, occur. Fans will, and especially in this economy, fans will buy things, if they can afford them, but they won't buy things if they can't, or if they just find that, hey, other wrestlers or other things are just, catching way more my attention, or, whatever. So again, you've really got to take in the full perspective. And again, you could say that, t-shirt sales or something else actually, starts it, in a sense, or whatever. Or it could be any metrics. Oh, I hear the Joe Hendry shirt, sold 1,000 shirts, that's, or whatever it was. Like, that's 5 times more than anyone else on the roster or whatever. I know it's not, but again, like, that's what I mean. Like, if that were true, then you start going, oh man, well, I better buy a Joe Hendry shirt because, they're only going to have so many Joe Hendry shirts, and like, I want to get one. And wow, he must be really hot right now. So, hey, I want to be in on that because I really like Joe Hendry too. So, again, like, people will kind of follow that trend of going, oh, this person's really hot. Let's, jump on that bandwagon as well, because yes, we do like that person, but we want to see them succeed so much now because we know that they're getting hot. So we really want to tell, the producers and the, bookers and whatever else, hey, this guy is hot. Push this guy, please. We're telling you we want this guy. How do we get more of this guy? It doesn't matter who it is. Josh Alexander got really hot a few years ago. He's still pretty darn hot. He could still be the champion one of these days very soon again. Who knows? But we'll have to wait and see. He could be on a long road for another 6 months to a year or whatever it is to getting back to that title. Who knows what he's going to do between now and then? Will he win the title off Moose again? I don't see it. That's not where I'm looking at it, but anything is possible. But in my opinion, Joe Hendry's, like I've said several times, the first cab off the rank in terms of that. Then you've got to go back the other way, and you've got to look for heels to take it off of him, unless you're going to do it in like a multi-man match of some sort. And it's tough to find anyone that's really on that roster that really, besides Moose, I guess, that really services that role that's already up there with that. So it's really tough to sort of, maybe you could give it to Hammerstone. I don't know. I wouldn't be against that. I think that he could carry it as long as he doesn't get injured or whatever, like he is right now. But hey, it is what it is. I know that he's on the road to recovery, and I hope that he comes back soon, because he's great. And again, like, that's what I mean. It's so hard to find not just space right now, but it's hard to break out because, again, people will say, oh, well, they haven't got that good of a roster or whatever. No, but again, even the roster that they have is pretty darn stacked in terms of who's sort of at the top. Can you get past Josh Alexander? Can you get past Joe Hendry? No? Okay, well, then you're just not going to really get past them. And then there's even few other guys that are still on that periphery that feel like they could be, closing in on that sometime in the near future. Like, again, Santana and whatnot. So, again, Hammerstone, potentially, perhaps. I don't know. So, and again, like, you could look at somebody like Mike Bailey. He's still sort of around, and if potentially he's going to win Ultimate X, or the X Division title, rather, then he could have option C in his back pocket, maybe. I don't know. But again, that still is there. Maybe he won't do that, or maybe he won't be successful. I don't know. But that would be a good or interesting route to go at some point, perhaps. So again, you could still look at some of those other people that, maybe this isn't a full thing where we've really invested a lot into that. But again, it is a tentative push to saying, no, we want to see this guy as being up there amongst some of the other real top level wrestlers that we have in our company. And it's not like Jake hasn't got that opportunity. Again, he's got that opportunity this week in a match against Joe Hendry. That's going to be a really weird match because you've got two baby faces. But again, perhaps that's where you need to start. It's really tough now because, again, there's so many heels on the roster. But again, maybe you need to start thinking about turning him heel because, again, he's not really doing much as a babyface because he can't get past the other babyfaces. And yes, he can't become the champion right now because, again, it's Moose being a big heel. But again, if you're thinking about challenging down the road when Joe Hendry or somebody else is the champion and you're a babyface too, well, that's going to be a no, probably. You're not going to get there very easily. So, and again, I've just never really seen, Jake carry a story, realistically. So, I've seen, Mustafa Ali carry a story. That's, in some ways the role of a heel a lot of the time, to carry the story. But you can carry the story if you're a babyface, or at least co-carry the story if you're a babyface, and you can cut good promos and things like that. You don't need to cut the best promos ever, but you can still cut, if you can still cut a good promo, you can still carry that feud or help carry that feud and make it mean more and whatnot. Even Ellsworth, you look at some of the stuff that he did, like on his first night. Any man with two with the hands or whatever has a chance or whatever, And I know he's a meme or whatever now, or laughing stock now or whatever, but that's great. Like that kind of attitude, you know, or whatnot. Um, you can look at that and say, wow, yeah, he's probably going to lose, but like just he believes in himself and he's not going to quit and whatnot, but he'll probably get beaten. But he connected really well with the audience right then and there because that was what he had. He was given an opportunity and he took it and he did great stuff with it. And again, not to say that Jake hasn't, but again, he hasn't done as well as what a lot of other people have done and hasn't been able to capitalize, himself into that position of being one of the real top guys. So that's where I'm at with that, and I hope that people will see what I'm saying in this, and whatnot. I don't want to uh see a whole bunch of comments saying, "Oh, you don't like the guy," or what. I don't love the guy. He's not one of my favorites because again, he hasn't connected with me or the rest of the audience. I can't tell that he's connected with the rest of the audience, or I can tell that he hasn't connected as well with the rest of the audience as what other wrestlers have because again, you just see the excitement and the level of hype and the level of everything around a lot of other characters, particularly Joe Hendry, right now. But again, like it's really tough to stand in that shadow, and maybe he'll get his time in a year or two, or whatever, in a few years, whatever it is. Who knows? But we'll wait and see. But for right now, he's not. It's not that he's not ready. Ready. It's not that he's. It's that he's not ready. That's it. Like he's not ready to be the face of the franchise, and that is a lot of work. So I wish good luck to him. I hope for the best for him because again, like he could be something. You look at somebody like Brian Cage. He was a very simple, basic sort of character in many ways, but he got over, and he was a big powerhouse, but he got over. That's what Jake could be if you find a way for him to be booked right and he can get over and get over to the state that it would be something worthwhile putting the title on him, because you've got to be able to draw with somebody, you've got to be able to present these challengers to somebody for people to come to a show, buy a ticket to an arena, buy a pay-per-view, whatever, all that stuff, as I sort of said, be clamoring for interviews with this person, because they're the talk of the industry. And that's what they've got on their hands right now. So that's what they need to capitalize on. And will Jake ever get that? Again, let's wait and see. Don't put the cart before the horses, type thing. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, type thing. All these cliches again. But people who are saying, he sucks or anything like that, again, I'm not in that camp at all. Nowhere near it. And if you think that I am, then you're 1,000% wrong. And hope people understand that. That's where I'm at. I'm just saying he hasn't fully connected. He has connected in some ways with the audience, but not fully. And he isn't as up there as like a lot of other wrestlers. So he hasn't got the right things yet to be the top guy, as I've sort of said. So I hope that is a clear enough and well thought out enough sort of dictation, because that's what I mean. Like I don't want to just ramble on and say the same thing over and over again, but I want to clearly, as much as possible, explain a lot of different and complex points that hopefully will give you a perspective of like why I don't think that this guy is quite there yet. And yeah, let's keep cheering him or booing him if he turns heel or whatever, and see if we can get him there one of these days. But yeah, don't force it. Like, don't force anything. That's the problem in wrestling. Like, maybe that helps sometimes. Like the whole, Roman Reigns experiment. It was so forced, but then when he turned heel, it was so good because, you had that sort of like, well, this is already a made man, type thing. We know that he's, up there and whatnot. We know he's credible and whatnot because he's had a lot of credible moments as far as being a wrestler, but it's just that his character needed something else, not just to be a hokey, character or whatever. You can be a, sort of hokey character, but you don't need to be, Looney Tunes, silly, hokey, pokey, and like fans can get into you no matter who you are, and you need to be your real, authentic self as much as possible. So, and humans are fundamentally flawed things. So, yeah, that's one of those things that, he's got to, sort of find within himself as a character and as a wrestler. The best version of you as a wrestler is you with the volume up, like as they say. So yeah, hope to see that from him. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and I hope you guys will tune in again for another one.